An anime anthology is a special collection of different anime that are independent from another. Each entry is usually composed by a separate animation team, including animators, directors, and writers. More often than not, the staff is given much more creative freedom than for common productions, which can lead to a diverse range of artistic styles, storytelling techniques, and greater experimentation overall. Their primary goal is to showcase emerging talent within the anime industry, giving them a chance to create smaller-scale pieces that demonstrate their skills without committing to a full-length series or film. Such anthologies make for a great choice if you're tired of the massive influx of generic and mass-produced seasonals, and also if you want to discover new talent or what industry legends are capable of when they are provided with unconditional creative freedom. For these reasons, I have compiled a total of 7 different anime anthologies for you guys, which will hopefully spark your interest in more experimental anime and lets you discover many underrated faces of the industry. We will start off with the tamest and more traditional of the bunch and then work our way up to the really weird stuff. Let's dive in. Aoi Bungaku Series is the first anthology we'll look at. Released in 2009, it's got 12 episodes of standard length and consists of 6 short stories that were adapted from Japanese classics. The kind of classics Japanese students are forced to read in school, which even the intro guy who does complimentary commentary points out. Now, I know what you think. We all had English class or whatever our native language is and had to read these older, supposedly once popular books that were incredibly dull, and we all just ended up reading the summary on Wikipedia. For me, that were the likes of Intrigue in Love, Wojciech and Buddenbrooks, though to be fair, a few of those were actually quite enjoyable for me, namely Faust, Metamorphosis and The Golden Fleece. Thankfully, Aoi Bungaku Series goes more towards the direction of the last 3. These short stories are enjoyable for the most part, but also of varying quality, ranging from bad joke to pretty solid character drama. Oh, and in fact, most of them can be categorized as character dramas, which I think fits well with both the limited runtimes and their authors. You see, most of these authors seem to have used their short story for self-insertion and as some kind of autobiography. In the first story, for example, called No Longer Human, characters attempt a double suicide, which the author Osamu Dazai tried as well. And that's only one of many instances where the original creators heavily depict their own, often dark and depressing life in fictional form. But Aoi Bungaku Series isn't just a showcase of canonical Japanese literature and writers. Every part also gets their very own directors such as Atsuko Ishizuka and Tetsuro Araki, but often also character designers such as Takeshi Obata and Tite Kubo. Needless to say, this series is very well directed. As for the overall quality of each part, well, I'll give you a short rundown. The first story, No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai, is probably my favorite of the bunch and the most read work in Japan for a reason. It gets the longest runtime and thus deeper and more intricate character development. Watch this if you like a good old dark and depressing descent into madness and away from humanity. Following up on that, we get a stark contrast to probably the weakest entry called In the Forest Under Cherries in Full Bloom by Ango Sakaguchi. The problem with this one is that it tries its best to make a joke out of itself, even though it's about a bandit who captures and brutally murders people. For instance, this story obviously takes place in feudal Japan, yet there are multiple scenes where the MC does stuff like chewing gum or listening to music with his modern-day earbuds. I found these constant mood swings to be pretty damn jarring and contradicting. If you're gonna skip something, then do it here. After that comes Kokoro by Natsume Soseki, which is about a tragic love triangle. What makes this more interesting than its peers, however, is that it's told from 2 different perspectives, which makes you likely change your opinion on the characters in the end. Then we get Run Melos, also by Osamu Dazai. We follow a playwright who writes a play. Duh. This story stands out by using an intertwined parallelism between the play itself and the actual life experiences of the author. This might be my second favorite work, and I swear it's not because of the light Yagami writing scene. Next, there is The Spider's Thread by Ryonosuke Akutagawa. This is a story specifically written for young children, so naturally there's lots of murder. Anyway, that's all there is to it really. Pretty weak in my book. And last but not least, Hellscreen by the same author. Here the king's painter is tasked to paint an image of the king's country, so he goes out of his way to make it as accurate as possible. This one's got the most powerful scene in the whole series, which makes it already far more interesting than Akutagawa's previous work. As it stands, Aoi Bungaku Series is a worthwhile journey to some of Japan's most famous literary works. Though they are considered masterpieces, this doesn't mean they are without flaws. Some of them feature obvious plot contrivances, others feel confusing or rushed, and worst of all, some are simply not funny. It's entirely possible many of those reached higher fame because of the peculiar life of their authors. Still, if you want to try out an anime anthology that's more in line with normal series and that focuses on directing, then you have my blessing. Next up is Memories, a 1995 compilation of 3 standalone short films based on the works of Katsuhiro Otomo, the creator of Akira.
Leave me alone!
This is also the last of the more traditional anime anthologies. Since these are movies instead of mere episodes, the production value is incredibly high, with lots of detail and fluid animation. On top of that, big names alongside Otomo like Yoko Kanno and Satoshi Kon were involved as well. The first film, called Magnetic Rose, is about trash collectors in space who receive an SOS signal from some mysterious rose-shaped space station. When they explore the interior and search for the source of the signal, they find themselves within the memories of a renowned opera singer, where the line between imagination and reality becomes blurred. Now, many people seem to like this one the best. And I have to agree, this is one of the few actually creepy anime that border on effective horror. Thankfully, there aren't any cheap jump scares to be found, but rather a consistent feeling of uneasiness created by a superb dark and gloomy atmosphere as the characters descend deeper and deeper into the palace-like structure. Definitely the easiest recommendation out of all 3 pieces. The second film is called Stink Bomb. This is a rather macabre comedy where a Smash player goes out in the open. I mean, where a lab employee accidentally swallows some experimental pills that provide him with a deadly body odor that kills everyone who smells it. He's now basically becoming some kind of unintentional supervillain that has to be stopped through the combined power of the Japanese and US military. I also like this one. Certainly a contrasting tone to Magnetic Rose, but it manages to be pretty humorous and entertaining with its absolutely ridiculous premise that it delivers decently well. Last of the 3 movies, and also the shortest one, would be Cannon Fodder, which has the most unique art style out of all of them. It serves as a satire to a pretty obvious reference, and I think it does it well enough, though there is nothing particularly unique in its core message. There is this city that consists of like 90% cannons where almost every job has something to do with them. At regular intervals they all fire towards an enemy, which we never even got to see but only hear on the radio about. Pretty solid as well in my book. Overall, Memories might be the most consistent anime anthology out there. All entries are distinct from each other with different genres and themes and manage to be both interesting and entertaining all the way through. Okay, now it gets a bit weirder, though still somewhat familiar. Neo Tokyo is a 1987 3-part anthology focusing specifically on science fiction. Each of the 3 segments got a different screenwriter and film director, including Yoshiaki Kawajiri, who in my opinion directed some of the best movies anime has to offer. The first part turns out to be the most unique. It's about a little girl and her cat being lured by a clown into a circus. And that's it. Just a heads up, from here on out it's gradually less and less about story and characters and more about artistic concepts, animation and directing. And honestly, everything you see on screen right now is basically what this is. A very unique and surreal art style with great detail and animation, creating an impeccable atmosphere and lots of creatively directed mindfuckery. There is hardly any dialogue and instead the focus lies on infrequent music and sound effects. This part also encloses the other 2 as it basically opens and closes the curtains on them, which made for a nice meta touch. The second part is about a futuristic and crazy high-speed car race that reminded me a bit of F-Zero and Redline. Here it's shown how the current champion completely breaks both physically and mentally. It's all about the disturbing imagery that showcases these breakdowns. Can't really say more on that, it's really just a cool experience. Finally, we get the odd one out. No, not because it's super unique, quite to the contrary. It's the most mundane segment in the whole thing. It's about a massive cancelled project that needs to be stopped in order to minimize costs. For that, our protagonist is dispatched to the construction site, which is completely handled by robots who happen to have a different opinion of the project. There is some humor and theme about corporate mankind's relationship with machines thrown in as well. This one has the classic Akira art style with lots of impressive machinery and stuff. Overall, I found it pretty alright. Less memorable than the other 2, but worth the watch nonetheless. Genius Party is a collection of 7 uniquely different shorts from 2007. From this point on, I will not go over every single one anymore, as they just grow in amount and will instead only focus on the standouts. Among them is already the intro of the anthology, which can be considered a separate entry in and of itself. It's got a very unique art style and doesn't feature a single human, but these weird creatures in balls who make up a brain at the end. Don't ask, just enjoy the ride, which should pretty much be the tagline for all these shorts. This time each of them is directed and written by the same person, so you know exactly who to blame. Among them industry legends such as Masaki Yuasa and Shinichiro Watanabe. Those two also just happened to create my two favorite entries apart from the intro. Most of these shorts are really artistic, experimental and downright bizarre. Apart from the last one, which feels more like a Makoto Shinkai movie, but is instead made by Watanabe. You can tell because students brought a hand grenade to a fistfight and it's not a fucking snorefest. All things considered, Genius Party starts the trend of anime anthologies being really hit or miss. There are some incredibly creative gems buried under a bunch of dull, sometimes pretentious and even bad CG-infected anime shorts. Still, if you're looking for promising talent, you can find it here. Or avoid them at all costs next time. Another anime anthology is the Animatrix from the year 2003. This one's pretty special to me as my favorite movie of all time is in fact The Matrix. Now before you leave, don't worry, knowledge of the Matrix franchise is not needed to enjoy this anthology. It only enhances the experience in my eyes. The Animatrix, which is much more widely known in the film community than in the anime community by the way, features 9 shorts that are all about 10 minutes in length and obviously relate to the Matrix in some way. The short story called The Second Renaissance, for example, is a prequel to the original movies and serves as the backstory for how the Matrix got created in the first place. In terms of lore, this one was the most exciting for me as I always wondered about that. Other shorts can be seen more as side stories that expand the universe a bit. My highlights among these have to be Kid Story, Program and World Record. Kid Story might be my favorite piece of animation of all time, helmed by Shinya Ohira and Shinji Hashimoto. This out of all of them showcases the best that when you give talented creators full creative control, magic happens. But Program and World Record aren't far behind, with stuff that was heavily involved in the production of the movie Redline as well. In terms of sheer visual fidelity, these three easily take the cake out of all anime discussed in this video, at least for me. With that being said, a bunch of misses have found their way in here too. Namely, the first and last short are just... all in all, solid anthology. Even more so if you like The Matrix. The Japan Animator exhibition. I watched this the very first time when it fully released in 2015. This was around the time when One Punch Man happened and I got really into Sakuga and animation stuff. It's a collaborative series consisting of a staggering 35 original net animations, which means they were specifically produced for the internet. The project was partially designed by Evangelion's Hideaki Anno to offer new animators more exposure to a worldwide audience. And you can pretty much find anything here. Music videos, a key animation comparison, Evangelion lore, mindfucks or just normal yet incredibly high quality short stories. Even the intro is very creative in and of itself, and some shorts served as prototypes for later series such as Yuri on Ice. For that reason though, it also stands alone as the biggest divide between hits and misses. For all intents and purposes, let's focus on the hits. First off, there is Me Me Me. Yep, the same music video that broke the anime community for a while when it came out. Then there is Obake-chan, a cute ghost who does silly ghost things. Or Ultraman, an awesomely animated fight sequence that I hope triggers Gridman would be. Third in place would be Sex and Violence with Max Speed by the one and only Hiroyuki Imaishi, which very accurately describes itself already. My choice for runner-up would then be Kanon, an incredibly creative adaptation of the novel Adam the Creator, where Adam destroys and recreates the world. And finally, my favorite out of all 35 shorts has to be Hammerhead. This piece is about a man whose skull was crushed and who developed superpowers such as super strength and regeneration as a result of that. Yeah, not the most sensical of origin stories, but for a brutal and messy anime such as this one it works rather well. Anyway, he's living in constant pain and suffering and now searches for an enemy strong enough to end his misery for good. Since he proves useful to humanity though, he gets revived all the time even as a cell pile. As you can imagine, it's disgustingly brutal and the animation goes complete bonkers. This is what I wanted Chainsaw Man to be, yet unfortunately I don't think we're ever gonna see a full series made out of this. Overall, the Japan Animator Expo provides the greatest variety out of all anthologies I've seen so far. You're bound to find something you're interested in. And if not, oh well, at least we have Anime Walter White. And at last, the final anime anthology we're going to be looking at. AniKuri 15 from 2007. In my eyes, this is the most artistic and experimental out of all of them. It consists of a total of 15 shorts that are all a measly 1 minute in length, so watching the whole thing takes less time than a single regular anime episode. This time constraint forces the 15 separate directors to either brainstorm and execute a story with small enough scale, or they go for the weird shit route, like Mamoru Oshii's Project Mermaid, coming from the creator of Ghost in the Shell. I won't talk a lot about these though, since they are just so damn thin in content and it's really more about the vibe. Like other compilations, some shorts are better and more coherent than others. Only in the joke department they all succeed for some reason. Like one of my favorites called Princess Onmitsu Displays. It's basically a hyperactive magical girl anime that still manages to subvert expectations in such a short time frame. Like when she encounters some bishonen that usually would make her fall in love with them, only to promptly treat him like Team Rocket. Then there's good old Satoshi Kon, who takes his job way too serious again and makes the most competent work like it's nothing. But I'm embarrassed to say that my favorite short of this whole anthology comes from none other than Makoto Shinkai, a director that at least in my view has yet to make a single good movie. Or at least that was my opinion of him until I watched his part here. In standard Shinkai fashion, it has this very orthodox but high quality anime look to it, but it's about a cat. And it's also genuinely amusing, something that I cannot say about his other works. But yeah, definitely check this one out, especially as a cat person. And there you have it, 7 anime anthologies that showcase some of the best animators, writers and directors Japan has to offer. But of course, it's also a way to discover emerging talent for both the anime industry and you. Yes, you. If you ever go ahead and try one of these, definitely make sure to follow each creator's other works once you're impressed by them. This has led me personally to many hidden gems already that I would not have found without these kinds of compilations. Unfortunately, they are all pretty old by now, with the most recent one being Japan Animator Expo from 2014, so discovering someone completely new is probably out of the question. I really hope some of the veterans do another one of those showcases at some point to help out the new generation of Japanese artists. Until then though, you should have enough resources to make it through the winter. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching. Are you aware of any other anthologies that I may have missed? Let me know in the comments. If you liked what you saw, I'd always appreciate a like, and if you want to see more videos like this, don't hesitate to subscribe. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.